You know, we have a well-known artist in the countdown who once stepped between two men to stop a fight, and instead stopped a knife blade that punctured his lung and almost ended his career, not to mention his life. That story and his latest hit are coming up.
Hits from coast to coast. American Top 40.
Well, now we're up to the hit by the popular singer who once stepped between two men to stop a fight and wound up stopping a knife blade that nearly killed him. It happened in July of 1968 while the artist was in New York on a promotional tour. The singer's brother, who was traveling with him, got into an argument with the desk clerk at the hotel. When the singer stepped up to ask what was going on, the clerk pulled a knife, and in the scuffle stabbed the singer in the chest, puncturing a lung. For the next 11 days, doctors couldn't say whether he'd live or die, and when he finally did begin to recover, they told him he absolutely could not do any kind of singing for at least a year. But the singer told us that he was so glad just to be alive that 2 months later he was back on the road doing his nightclub act. This week, B.J. Thomas, the man who wouldn't be slowed down even by a punctured lung, moves up to number 36 in AT40 with his latest hit. It's titled, Don't Worry, Baby. 35-year-old B.J. Thomas, second week on the chart, moving up to 36 with Don't Worry, Baby. 35 hits to number 1 and counting them down.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
Well, now we're up to the singing star from Texas who said he couldn't enjoy one of the biggest hits of his career because his life had been ruined by drugs. The man is B.J. Thomas, and he told us that he'd had problems with drugs on and off from the time he was 15 years old. In his early 20s, that problem became deadly serious. And between 1970 and 1975, B.J. Thomas went through $13 million, most of it spent on his habit. By April of 1975, when he hit number 1 with Hey, Won't You Play Another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song, he had absolutely nothing to celebrate. Friends and fellow musicians were avoiding him. It was getting harder and harder to find work. And finally, his wife and children walked out. With his record at the very peak of the pop charts, B.J. Thomas's life was hitting rock bottom. At one point, he came within a heartbeat of dying from an overdose of drugs. And then, just when it seemed that things couldn't possibly get any worse, hope arrived in a phone call. B.J. had called his estranged wife in Texas to say hello, and she asked him to come back home, told him there was help waiting for him there. Well, B.J. says he was desperate, so he went. And the help he found was a familiar one. His wife introduced B.J. to some new friends she'd made, people who'd guided her into a devoted Christian way of life. And after talking with them for several days, B.J. says he realized he was hearing a way out of his drug habit and the misery he'd been living in for so many years. He told us, and I'm quoting, "I just placed my trust in the Lord and turned it over to Him. And immediately my drug habit and my craving for drugs stopped. Previously, I'd been through withdrawal pains many, many times. But this time, I went through no withdrawals. To me, it was a miracle." End of quote. Well, since then, B.J. has reunited with his family, straightened out his life, and returned to the charts with a big summertime hit. This week, he's up to number 19 with Don't Worry, Baby. Here's B.J. Thomas on American Top 40, moving up a notch to number 19 with Don't Worry, Baby.
The hits from coast to coast.
Well, now on American Top 40, it's time for the hit that recently set a new record for the longest song title ever to make number 1. Previously, that record was held by a summer novelty hit from 1960. Do you remember which one it was? The man who sang it was Brian Hyland. Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. Well, there are 41 letters in that title, but a song with a 50-letter title broke the record when it hit number 1 just 4 weeks ago. This week it drops to number 20. Now I have to decide between announcing the whole title or playing the song for you. Well, let's try to squeeze them both in. At number 20, here's B.J. Thomas and Hey, Won't You Play Another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song.
It's lonely out tonight. Done somebody wrong song.
B.J. Thomas and a former #1 best-selling song in the Billboard chart, now at number 20. That's Hey Won't You Play Another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song. And it's been around for 13 weeks, longer than any other song in the countdown. As the countdown rolls on.
The hits from coast to coast.